Hey everybody, Nick here, and I got a quick little take on this little guy. This is the Spyderco Delica in Wharncliffe blade. This is kind of neat because this is a knife that was originally kind of mocked up by a guy on the Spyderco forums, and Spyderco took a look at it and said, you know what? That's kind of a neat idea. I'm going to do that. And indeed they did, and that's kind of excellent. I like that sort of responsiveness, and it's a neat little trick coming from Sal et al. One thing you're going to notice, though, is that this is a serrated Wharncliffe Delica. Thing is, I am not a brilliant man. When I saw the Wharncliffe Delica available, I immediately placed the pre-order, and I didn't quite look at which one I was ordering, and so I ended up with a serrated version. This is unfortunate because I really don't like serrated knives. It's not that they're not effective cutting tools. Absolutely, Spyderco's serrations are, well, they're quite good. I mean, it is sharp, very much so. And they can be very useful in some situations. If you cut a lot of rope, if you need something that won't go dull, well, I mean, it'll go dull just as quickly, but it can still cut a little bit better when it's dull than something with a plain edge. But, so as a result, unfortunately, this guy is just not of particular interest to me, and it's going to be heading back home. That said, I can still say a couple of things about the overall Wharncliffe Delica experience. So I'm going to be honest here. I can't give the full good, great, bad, and the ugly because this just isn't very good for the kinds of cutting tasks I do regularly, and it's just not a knife that I feel like I can hold on to, that I'm going to be able to review fairly. Serrated blades are just simply not my bag, and so instead of doing the full good, great, bad, and the ugly, I just want to talk a little bit about some strengths and some weaknesses. The biggest strength of this is obviously the Wharncliffe blade. A Wharncliffe blade can be a very useful thing. It gives you basically the ability to make these sorts of drawing cuts very, very nicely. I mean, you can do that with a normal Delica, and practically speaking, the normal Delica blade isn't all that far off, but a true Wharnie blade can be a beautiful thing, and it can really make some very nice cutting. It is not a bad thing whatsoever to have a Wharnie on there. I'm really glad that Spyderco is offering that. The other good thing about this is that they haven't changed what it is to be a Delica. It is still at its core a Spyderco Delica number 4, with the same clip, same body, same steel, VG10, which is okay, etc. I mean, it's still fundamentally a Delica, and so here you've got the advantages of a Wharncliffe blade and the fact that it's a Delica. That's a recipe for some goodness. Unfortunately, there is one disadvantage to going to the Wharnie blade that I think is kind of trouble, and that's why I'm not going to be picking one of these guys up in a plain edge. On the regular Delica, one of its very best characteristics is the fact that it disappears in the pocket, and part of the reason for that is that it's very, very thin at the top. I mean, this little area here is relatively thin, so when you're trying to get your hand, for instance, by the knife into your pocket, there's very little, and you can really tuck it to the edge of your pants. Unfortunately, on the Wharnie Delica here, they needed to make the blade a little bit taller, and that makes total sense. Even though the blade itself is about the same height, in order to support the end with something that's not super thin, they had to use this kind of radius here, or not radius, circle, whatever, curve, in order to give it a little bit more love and a little bit more support. Unfortunately, though, this has the disadvantage of when the knife is folded up, because a straight line doesn't curve, go into a curved handle so well, it sticks out a little bit more above the pocket clip. And so these two knives are different in the pocket, fundamentally. If I put them on top of one another, you can really see that distinction. The Wharnie is thicker overall, and because this top edge here is not particularly well chamfered, it's just not very nice. And one of the very best things for me is the carryability. And so the fact that going to the Wharncliffe does negatively impact the carryability. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not a Medford. It's not, frankly, it's still nicer to carry than the PM2. Although, that said, at the point where it's sitting in your pocket, it is actually thicker than your PM2, which is not super stellar to me. But, hey, whatever. Either way, though, the fact that impacts the carry means that the Delica becomes a little bit less Delica-like, and that one of the roots of the excellence sort of disappears. And so, like I said, even though I like the fact that they did a Wharncliffe Delica is not going to be finding its way into my collection anytime soon. This blade is close enough to Wharnie in a lot of ways for these sorts of pushing cuts, and what you lose in terms of carryability, it doesn't seem like a great cost trade-off. So that's kind of my final conclusion. I love that they did a Wharncliffe Delica. It's really cool that they did it on the basis of somebody in the forums. Excellent, nice guys. But unfortunately, it sacrifices something that's a little important to me, and so the advantages of the Wharncliffe blade don't necessarily outweigh that, and so this why's not going to be sticking around in my life. There you go. Hope this is interesting to you. Sorry I didn't do the full review, but, fate intervened, and I just don't like serrations. And, well, mostly I hope that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of the day, and if you do choose to buy one anyways, you've been warned. Okay. Still, nice knife. Have a good one, everybody. Bye now.